Okay, so we made it through all the technical difficulties. And cool. All right. Well, thanks for doing this call with me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to kind of talk about some of your lures, and I've been using them for a while. I've been catching a lot of fish on them, and all my friends have been catching a lot of fish on them over the years, and so it's excited, and I'm excited to actually see you face to face too. So really meet you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and this is. I think we've talked on the phone a bunch and done some texting, but it's all good. Here we are.
Awesome. I guess the first thing would be great if you didn't mind kind of talking about a little bit of history behind your, lure making, how you got involved, and where it started out, and whatever you'd like to share with us in that. That'd be great to hear.
Yeah, growing up here, I always had the fishing bug from little kid time, and my first official job was when I was 9 or 10. I started working on one of the charter boats down in Koala Basin, and my first bag of lures that was given to me were all the old Kona scoop nose swimmer baits.
Yeah.
And so my first appreciation for lure fishing was untangling lines and playing a lot, trying to get hook rigs that would where you'd actually get hookups, because so many of those lures would get so many bites, but they were just so active. And so I had a lot of frustration. My early fishing, my jet heads were my go-tos, because the swimmer baits were just so hard to get the bites, but they would get the bites. So you'd have to have them in the water. And when I was about 12, one of my dad's friends showed me how to make some molds, and started playing in his workshop under his house in Kaimuki off 6th Avenue. And I'd go down there after school. I'd get a ride up to Kaimuki and go up there and pour resin and huff fumes and get things way too hot and smoke off, crack things all the time. And it was a labor of love, and still to this day, the roots of lure making for me are what's so important, that it was all about wanting to be out there. I think for most of us, we're either fishing, we're thinking about fishing, or we're planning on going fishing. It's there's always fishing in the back there of the mind somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, it was definitely I was always bitten by that bug, and thinking about ways I could improve my hookups and ways I could improve my spread.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's really cool. And I don't want to go too far off, but I did find it interesting you're talking about the scoop face lures, the older ones, because I have a couple I pull every once in a while, and they just get railed. They get bit like crazy, but the rate is really bad on those things. And it's something I kind of always struggled with those, but it's hard for me to like pull one out and not have it in the spread or whatever because it get bit. But then it's like, is it even worth it having it there if it doesn't get bit, if you can't get hookups on it? So interesting to hear that. I've seen some pictures of the older Hawaiian ones with pretty long heads with a big scoop on it. Those things must have been pretty radical to keep running through the spread, right?
I have an incredible collection, from over the years, and some of them, I love them, and I fondle them from time to time just to get ideas. And but the one thing that we've really just seen probably in the last 10 years, and this is a shout out to all the makers out there, all the guys who are producing baits. And I see so many just great innovations and use of new materials. And so I'm just really impressed watching how this craft has changed over the years. For me growing up, there weren't that many lure makers. I mean, there were guys doing it in their garages, but what we're seeing today is kind of the evolution and revolution of access to materials, all kinds of much easier to use materials than we had when I was growing up. And the basic knowledge is out there. I mean, you can go to YouTube, or you can do your homework, and you can find all these things really easily. Growing up, it was all trial and error.
Yeah.
And, you know, my Bible was, you know, Jim Rizzuto and Big Game Fishing the World, and Big Game Fishing Hawaii. That was my favorite book, and read it probably 30 or 40 times cover to cover. But that local knowledge was really kept by the individual lure makers, and that was something that was always made it fun, discovering and playing with new things. And I think today we're at a point where we're just seeing where that evolution has gone, where we have just so much creativity out there. So shout out to all the makers out there. I really love the stuff you're doing. I keep an eye on it all, and it's really impressive.
Yeah. It's it kind of can be daunting now. There's so many different options, and there's so much, you know, there's so many good lure makers on the scene now. It's exciting for sure. And I guess to kind of follow with that, you know, there's been certain baits that it's just have made you really famous throughout the fishing community. I mean, before I knew who you were, I knew what a smash bait was. I can't remember I think the first time I ever pulled that, somebody brought one down to, I think I was in Vanuatu or something, and I thought, oh, this thing's cool, and I pulled it, and immediately it was like, oh, this thing's badass. I could run it in the rough. It was, you know, it was a really cool. So, you know, I know you have a bunch of lures that that kind of, you know, over the years have just been consistent catchers. But, you know, is there a couple that stand out in your mind of your creations that you kind of hold dear, like as your one, you know, as like your staple baits that really kind of made your name get out there?
I definitely have my personal favorites of things I make, and things I like. I feel kind of naked fishing without. You know, just a brief story on the smash bait, because that has become really popular. And, you know, when I was growing up making lures, I had a little wood lathe, and everything was cut on the wood lathe, every piece. And the smash bait was actually a big blank that I made to cut down to size. So I made the biggest thing I could make. I made it in like a long orange juice canister, and made this master, made the angle. And that was, you know, before I had explored all my, you know, the angle options, so to speak. It was just a blank. It was just meant to be a blank. And at the time, I was fishing with Ray Corder on the Pacific Blue in Honolulu. I was 17. And he asked me to make him one of the big ones, because that's what he wanted, was the biggest thing possible, because he loved his Marlin, fishing. And so I poured him one of these big blanks, but it was bigger than I was used to pouring. And when you pour more volume of resin, that's really challenging to, especially depending on the kinds of inserts you have in there, not to have cracks and overheating. And this one cracked, and it didn't split and shatter, but it cracked. Yeah. And I gave it to him, and it was a little squished, and it wasn't perfectly round. But he spent about 3 weeks walking around the harbor after our charters, hand sanding this thing, polishing this down. And that lure was phenomenal. And that was really the origins of the modern smash bait today. And Ray Corder was from a fishing family. His brothers fished. He grew up fishing in Koalo Basin with his dad on their charter boat. I believe it was the Happy Times.
Okay.
And so anyway, it was for me, you know, I was, one thing I can say also about, you know, growing up in the lure making, I was so fortunate to have people who mentored me that were really knowledgeable and really watched their baits. Yeah. And Ray was that kind of fisherman.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So then from that, you kind of followed with the super smash and the smaller smash bait and all the different kind of sizes and stuff.
You know, over the years, I've adapted some different sizes of the smash just because it's been so successful, and there's something about the swim of the smash bait. And I was listening to you talk when you were doing another discussion about the smash and how you like to get it in that spot where it's just about to lose control.
Yeah.
And the thing about the smash bait is it's like so many of the new baits that are coming out that have a little bit more radical angle. You have to adjust them. You have to stay on top of it. My experience with lure fishing is there are some lures you can just kind of set and forget. Yep. And there's other lures that you kind of watch them and you fine tune. And the smash bait, I loved it when you said that because my theory and getting the most bites out of that bait is just having it right on that edge of losing control in the face of the wave, and that explosive action. It really gets a reaction from the fish.
Yeah. I've seen fish look at a bunch of lures in my spread and come up on the shore, look around, and then just light up and pile on that before. And so there's something to it for sure. There's something to the little wiggle that it's got and how it produces bites. So I mean, Kona, I love that lure. I mean, I could run it every day.
And so then if you were going to do the absolute opposite for me, my other probably favorite lure or second favorite lure would be the Magic Bullet, which is just like a broomstick handle bullet with a fish head in it. And that lure that I've been making a variation of for probably over 30 years now, that is one I always feel like I'm fishing when it's in the spread.
Okay.
The Magic Bullet. Okay. Yeah, I call it a Magic Bullet, but it was just that simple broomstick handle shape, real, kind of soft rounded bullet. And that lure just, I love to eat fish. So I'm a meat fisherman at heart. And that lure is just, that's the one. So is that the 12-inch?
This is the bigger one that you see.
Yeah, you have the bigger version right there. Yeah.
I don't have the smaller one. I guess I didn't know there was a bigger or smaller one, but this is the one that I actually, Hannah told me about the smaller one. I guess her and Ross caught a bunch of fish on the smaller size or something. But yeah, this is the one I've been pulling, and immediately when
I love that
in the spread, the thing the ripple it made, I was like, oh yeah, this thing is gonna get hammered.
Oh, it looks great with the flash of blue. Looks awesome.
Yeah, I like it with the flash. I just did kind of a natural blue over white, and I was running it on the Stinger, and then I ran it on the long rigger for a little, but the ripple on it was insane, and it got bit. I think it got bit just about every day I ran it, and we were in the winter, so I think it's probably a really good bait for a wintertime fishing here in Kona, but I'm definitely running it in the summer. I'm sure it's going to get a lot of bites. And I had a pretty good hookup rate on it too. So some of my bullets, I don't know, some bullets for me have a great hookup rate and some of them don't. Some of them get smashed, but they just seem to, the bites are weird on them, but I seem to be getting them on this one. But that's cool that we're kind of go into this, because this is definitely one of the baits I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. So this is a lure that you've been making for a while as well, and then did you stop for a while and then start again, or it's always kind of been there? Or
I've made so many lures over the years, and I there was a time, I'm kind of going back to this too. I had an insert that I really loved for the Magic Malolo, and I started incorporating that in some of my other shapes. And so I had 5 or 6 different shapes that I used the same insert for. Yeah. And we're going back about 20 years now. And they were all kind of your standard. One was a cup face. One was a straight cut, a blunt cut, what I call a Mongo. And they all had their different swim action, but the insert was kind of the key, the balance. Just kind of, my thought has always been, in lure making, between flash and realism. I love things. That's why I use all the mirrors. I love things that flash, that are bright in the water. I just think that really elicits a strong response from predators. And then the glow and the realism of a bait is also, you know, kind of the other side of that, where you're either just trying to get a fish's attention, like a teaser, where you're just putting out something that's, you know, bright and flashy and strong, or you're trying to actually emulate a bait fish and create something, you know, a swim pattern that is so lifelike that it's incredibly edible.
Yeah, yeah. So with the fish head inserts and stuff, I know this is something you've been doing for a while. I've seen it in a while. Do you think it makes it? I mean, do you think they see that and think of it, and it looks more realistic in the water, and they actually, you know, zoom in on that and kind of see a fish head in there, as opposed to just like you know, like I have one of your that deep six XL deep six or bigger deep six with
Large deep six.
Yeah. Which is just badass too. But what do you think in terms of fish when they, you know, because I know like the fish inserts they've been around for a long time, but they're starting to get super popular again. And there's certain lure makers that's mainly what they're putting in there, and there's some that aren't, and this and that, and some I've heard all different theories, right? But it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say. Do you think that they actually, when they're coming in to feed, they see that fish head and go, "Oh, this looks real.
I absolutely think that there's, you know, because we see fish eat from all different positions, right? We see fish come from behind. We see fish rocket up from below. We see fish come from the side. And so overall, I do think that, you know, there's the wiggle and movement of skirts and flashaboo that definitely are kind of, you know, anything out there that's wiggling and swimming is going to get eaten. And as a lure maker, you know, to me, it's important just to say, I would never want someone to just run all my stuff, because to me, it's kind of like we go out there and we have a mixed bag of tricks up our sleeve that we get to present. And I believe that when it comes to, you know, presenting variety spread is really something that works. You know, you kind of, especially what we do here in Hawaii, which is different. We hunt and we have to go out and we have to we're fishing deep water.
Yep.
We don't exactly know where all those pockets of bait are going to be, especially in the deep water. It's just, you know, you're out there looking, and with equipment, that's the bottom sounding equipment and stuff we have now, it's so much different than it used to be. But variety spreads. And I do think, especially tuna fishing, mai fishing, that the fish heads really stand out and get more action. Marlin are aggressive to a point where I think they, you know, they see movement and they'll either turn on or not. But I've done so well with the fish heads and also the mirrors, the flash for effect. I've kind of I'm in the flash and realism boat. I like to either present something that's really going to stand out bright, or something that's going to look like it's actually alive.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And what do you think about eyes? Like, you know, some guys think that they target the eye on the lure, you know, and I've seen guys, they put like an eye closer towards the top or farther back. And a lot of guys, some people really like the red eyes in it. Do you think that's a factor in it when they're coming in to feed, that they target the eye when they come in and feed on it? Or do you think that's just kind of a theory?
Yeah, personally, I've never really been like the true believer in an eye is necessary. And partially, you know, up until it's only been more recently that the skirts don't have eyes on them. Growing up and, you know, fishing 30 years ago, 40 years ago, all our skirts, it was either you tied your own rubber skirts on, you cut them and tied them just like we do with our vinyl, or you bought skirts and they had an eye on the side of the skirt. And so over the years, especially, and when I was starting out, everything I made was just mirrors. I love mirrors. I'm a true believer,
Yeah.
and just that there's nothing like the flash of a mirror in the water, and it sends a message out. I've seen sea fish see it and come in and pick that one. If that's the only mirror bait in the spread, they'll pick that one out. And so over the years, I was kind of more looking at the response, getting the response out of the fish. I'm not really too concerned about the eyeballs.
Yeah.
I know that people love them, and it's such an attractive thing to have a beautiful eyeball in a lure. So most of the stuff I make now has an eye, or if it doesn't have an eye, it is designed for mass taking most advantage of the flash of the mirrors.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I agree with you on that. Cause I've seen them eat things. I've seen them eat some pretty crazy things. I don't know if the eye is a really necessary thing, but you're right. Though some people, they want it. They need to have an eye on their lure or whatever. It makes them feel better. So, but yeah, that's really cool. Well, moving on, I want to talk about a couple, I got a couple lures I kind of wanted to talk with you more about. And I just showed you that deep six. I don't have the regular deep six with me. I have this one sitting here, but I've caught some fish on I had a blue one like this, and I caught some pretty big fish on that. And then I had a regular deep six that we used to get railed on too. And Chip fished with me a little bit. I think it was last spring, and he had a couple deep sixes that he was kind of treasured as his little go-to. And we were trying to get spearfish for some slams and stuff like that for some guys and different things. And we had a couple deep six out there that he had running like I've never really seen them run before. I mean, he was adjusting them pretty much like every 15 minutes, I feel like. And but he was getting that one of them to just have this amazing action, just really good ripple, and then even dish ragging a little bit and stuff. But we were getting railed on that deep six. So yeah, I mean, that's another bait I think that everybody has probably heard of or caught fish on before. Is there any interesting stories about that, or anything you'd like to share about the deep six? Or
I originally made the deep six to catch tuna, and I made it as an ahi bait.
Yeah.
And I've been literally making that same shape now for 25 plus years. And probably the first one I think I made when I was fishing on the Huntress in Mike Hasbrock's garage. He had a lathe set up, and we cut a few bullet shapes, and that one just stuck. And it ended up being just such a phenomenal billfish bait that, it's definitely one of my preferred lures in the spread at all times. Smash bait short, deep six long.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely one that you hear about a lot here in Kona. People catching fish on is a deep six.
And it does catch its fair share of tuna as well. It does catch some tunas. It's just funny to me that it actually, and one of the things I think that we're seeing now with the evolution and all these lure makers is we're seeing we're starting to understand shapes better. I mean, I've been watching lures and creating shapes for so long. I feel like there are swim patterns that work really well. And there's swim patterns that are very consistent for getting bites. And along with having to raise fish and raise attention to your spread, I think one of the most important things, and this goes back to the scoop nose lures, is creating lures that are easy to eat and easy to catch. Because we've all seen fish come in hot and completely blow past the lure or knock it out of the water and miss it completely. And the bullets, the straight running baits, the hookup ratios are just so much better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And then it's interesting that you talk about patterns. When you're talking about that, are you kind of referring to actually your entire pattern? Because I like to think of like when I'm pulling lures, I like to think of the entire spread as complementing each other, you know, and I'm trying to create this profile in the water that's, okay, this is going to try and raise the fish. This is going to be what he might pile on more likely, and trying to create, you know, that sort of signature in the water, you know, and as a lure maker, and you've seen, you know, you look at lures differently. Is that something that goes through your mind as you're creating baits, as kind of like, signature patterns and things like that? Yeah.
You know, absolutely. And kind of going back to what I was saying about kind of mixing and matching your spread. I mean, I think you know, to me, I always want to give options. I want to have things out there that are more explosive and drawing the attention to the boat and to the spread, because the boat being the school of fish,
Sure.
and the stragglers being those closest baits, and then the far stragglers being the real easy subjects. And those are the ones, you know, that's where, you know, I want some easy to eat bullets, maybe even a real small bait out there. I love having something micro out there just as an option, because too many times that's what I catch my fish on or get the bite on, is that, you know, they come up looking, but the thing they actually eat is something small. And when you open up their bellies, there's a lot of confirmation for that, no matter what kind of fish you're fishing for.
Yeah, that's true. It's something sometimes that's hard to believe when you see how big these animals are, and then they pile on a tiny bullet. And yeah, I see it all the time. I mean, I probably didn't get as into pulling bullets as I did until I came and started fishing full time in Kona. You know, I used to pull maybe one, but for me, it was bullets were like a tuna bait, and I didn't realize how good of a marlin bait that just, you know, having a couple bullets out there. And it's funny, like in the winter or even in the spring, sometimes we get guys and they just want to catch spearfish, and we'll be pulling a spread of all bullets, and we'll catch really big blue marlin will come up and just pile on. They don't want to leave it alone. They'll get right up in it. So it's pretty cool to think that, yeah, it's, I think sometimes we can get like in that mindset of, oh, well, if you want to catch a big fish, you got to have big stuff out there, but that's not really always the case.
Yeah. When I was traveling a lot and fishing tournaments in other places, that was something that stood out to me. Is I'd get on these boats and these guys were running 5 explosive big baits for marlin.
Yeah.
And I'd always want to slip my chrome jet out there, or a bullet, or something quiet, because that's usually, so many times you raise the fish on an explosive bait, but you actually get the hook up on something a little easier to eat, a little more passive. And that's the origins of the Super Ninja. The Super Ninja was kind of a compromise between creating a bullet that people were interested in enough to run, and something that actually had a swim to it too, with a little pop.
Yeah.
Because if you just showed a bullet to a guy in a marlin tournament, he'd go, "That's for catching wahoo."
Yeah.
Or tuna, and that's not the money. You know, we're not in that category.
Yeah.
So the Super Ninja was actually, its origins were, you know, trying to target guys and get them to put more quiet baits in their spread, or more passive baits in their spread, because I know how important it is for me fishing that, you know, just that one bait that's a little easier to eat can make all the difference in how that goes from the time you raise the fish to the hookup.
Yeah. And oftentimes that's what they're going to come onto, is that little bullet, or, you know, something out there like that. So that's interesting to hear. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I guess that brings me on to talking about this bullet that you sent me, the Uncle Mo, is it called? Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah.
And I've heard about this from a bunch of people in Kona. And I got it right here in the winter, and I haven't fished much since I got it, so I haven't pulled it yet. But it looks like it's going to be deadly. And the color in it and everything, the fish, I mean, it looks badass. But this is like what we're talking about. It's not a massive bait, you know, but I guarantee this is going to be a marlin killer for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
what's
so
the
if you look
story
at that
behind it?
bait,
Yeah,
you look at the Uncle Mo shape, which is more of a teardrop, and compare it to the Magic, which is more of a kind of blunted round.
yeah,
They have a completely different swim pattern, and so I love having that variety. I think of my friends who are really into their river fishing and their hats full of different flies, different
yeah.
midges, and different sizes. And I think that we do that. We do that in our offshore fishing as well. And there are days where I prefer that Uncle Mo shape because it's a little it slips through the water easier. It's a little more of a skitter bait,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the Deep Six, a little more of a skitter bait. Whereas when you add that blunted round bullet shape, you get more of a pop out of the bait, and it's a little more aggressive.
Yeah. So what would your what kind of a scenario would you prefer in Uncle Mo style swimming action to your Magic bait? Is there a certain scenario like lack of bait or too much bait or what, or sea conditions or something? What kind of would for you designate, okay, I'm going to put that out today, or I'm going to put that out?
It's more sea conditions, and
Okay.
so I love things that skitter on the surface. I love baits that sizzle and do that kind of between the black water ruffle to the skitter.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really deadly swim pattern.
Oh yeah.
And so for fishing in Kona, I really like the Uncle Mo because it has more release, and it kind of just stays up on the surface and waddles along, sizzles along.
Okay.
And that Magic Malolo, I've fished in the roughest waters with the more blunted bullet shape. It really locks in, it pops. You can run that in big wind and big sea conditions, and it locks in.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool to know. Yeah, I'm really excited to be pulling them this season and see what we do. I've been pretty stoked with how that Malolo has been doing for me, so it's exciting. And I guess now talking about lures that hang in there. There's another lure I want to talk to you about, and that's your beauty.
The beauties.
This is the XL, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think you could probably pull this thing in a hurricane and get it to run perfect. I mean, Kenton brought one down one time. I think it was this summer for a tournament, and it was a little bit of a blue top and all mirrors. And we usually we always have a smash bait out there, but he said, oh, I've been getting bit so much on this going out to the seamounts. But he's driving through some nasty weather and stuff. So I thought, oh yeah, we'll see how it goes in the calm here. And we just started getting railed on this thing. Yeah, that was the first of me actually pulling one of these, but it ran awesome. And it got a lot of bites. I got to say that definitely did.
The beauty to me is a great shape because when you put a cup in a piece, and every cup is different too, how the cup is a cup can be really carved out, or it can be kind of softened and rounded towards the top. There's a cavitation that happens with a cup face bait that you just don't get. It's just not the same in any of the cut angled face baits. It cavitates and it wiggles and swims, like you can feel the vibration in the line. And especially the XL. The XL is probably, I've really, my favorites are the XL and the medium, the 9-inch and the 14-inch. And those are the ones when I'm in rough water, tournament fishing rough water, those two are really, really on the top of my list. And the thing too that's interesting to me, and this is just another discussion probably, but we've seen an evolution towards everything being belly weighted and kind of keel weighted.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings about that because some of my best, most productive lures are cylindrically weighted. And I think that there's a lot to be said for lures that have free movement. And especially when you're talking about a flat face or a cup face, it's kind of more important that that bait can do what it needs to do without the additional ballasting.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice sometimes when you're running belly weighted pieces, they'll be running beautiful, and then all of a sudden it'll go whoop, and it does a little whoop-de-doo. It has to catch it, so, you know, at some point the torque throws it out and it does a spin.
Yeah.
And the thing about centrifugally balanced pieces, round inserts or square inserts that are balanced without any keel weighting, they wander just the way they want to wander without any redirection from that weight, that ballast.
Yeah. That's really interesting to hear, because it's the popular thing is the keel weighted lures, right? And people take the lure and run it on a table and make sure it sits back right and whatever. But I think I don't know. I think it's an easier lure for a lot of people to run. I think that could be one of the reasons it's super popular, because it's keel weighted, and if they have a rig that's not perfect in there, it's probably going to run a little more than, you know, without a keel weighted lure. There's a little bit of an art to making them run the right way or the way you want it to go. But I don't know. It's hard for me to go away from the non-keel weighted lures. I've just caught a lot of fish on them over the years.
You know, I'm not, once again, another big discussion, but really, you know, when people tell me they're either getting bites and missing fish, or they're not getting bites and not catching fish, I always look at their hook rigs. I want to see what their hook rigs are like, because, you know, you can have a beautiful lure, and if your hook rigs are kind of funky, you'll see the fish come up and refuse the bite. You know, they'll come up and take a look and swim off. And there's an art form to rigging baits.
Oh, yeah.
And there's definitely, you know, the one thing you never want to cut corners on cost is good hooks, good crimps, and good leader, and good swivels. But all the, you know, your terminal tackle, those are places you don't want to cut corners, and you want to make sure that, you know, everything is streamlined and flows well with the lure choice and the hook rig.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That's cool to hear your take on that. Yeah. And I know some guys feel that the double hook rigs, they need them in certain lures and things like that, or whatever. But I've just kind of been on this single hook thing for a while, and I just seem to do a lot better on a single hook rig. And but yeah, everyone has their own little way of doing you know what they do. And I know I guess Chip had some way he was using a double hook rig to make his smash bait swim way out in the clean water, and that looked pretty cool. But I've been able to accomplish doing it with just using the coil memory and the hook, and turning the hook a little bit and getting them out in that really clean water. I don't know if it really makes a difference or not, but it makes me feel good when I see all of them out in that clean water outside of the wig. But
it sure makes you feel confident when you see your lure swimming out into that blue water and staying in the clear there. So, and you know, I think that especially with the single hook rigs, that ballasting and the keel weighting really does help kind of present the basis. So if you want to run your hook tip down, you have the strength of the bait to keep everything balanced, because, you know, that a lot of times that's a real challenging thing if you're running if you're running your hook down, and it's, you know, a very popular and very effective way to position your hook. But it also, that keeling will want to cause the bait to roll more. So without the keel weight, the lure will want to flop over.
Yeah, that is interesting to hear. Yeah, there's so much going on with all that stuff. It's like every year there's new little things, and I don't know, it's exciting. But yeah, I just, sometimes you have your certain baits that just work for you, and that's your thing. I had to just look at my phone real quick, because there was a bait that I'm actually not too familiar with, but Marty Bates was talking a bunch about this. It's a Bamboocha.
A Bamboocha.
Yeah, and he was like, man, that thing, I guess they were getting a majority of their bites over there in Cape Verde and wherever he's been fishing all over. And he was like, yeah, he's like, that thing is just on fire. And it's not a lure that I'm really that familiar with, but I just keep hearing about this lure. So yeah, what's the story with that? What's your,
you know, I think for me, I'm possessed by lure making. This is something I've done since I was a kid, and I am now, you know, almost 40 years later, still getting to actualize some of the designs I came up with when I was in, you know, high school with my graph notebook, drawing shapes and designs. And the things that make them all different can sometimes be subtle. With the Bamboocha, it has soft rails on the nose and a very slight cup, What it, you know, these and this is kind of what I was talking about with all the lure makers. I think what we're seeing and starting to really appreciate with fishing lures is kind of what we see happening in the surf industry. You know, the subtlety of the rail or the front edge of the lure, combined with the angle, because the angle of a lure and its attack as you drag it through the water is one of the most important aspects. You can take an angle that works well and change the shape several different ways and still get a really good swim pattern out of it.
yeah,
But it'll change subtly. And so sometimes I come across a shape as I'm cutting things and it just works, or it has something, there's something about it that responds really differently in the water. The Bamboocha, the first one I made, Clay Hensley took it to fish the tournaments in the Gulf. And I think he was on the Chupacabra at the time. And I think the first 3 tournaments, they had a majority of their bites on that one lure. And they ended up with over $1 million, 1.3 million in prize money for those first 3 tournaments. And It was on that lure. Now, why that lure hasn't been out there more and it's not in any catalogs, nobody else is selling it. Yep. It's one of those that, like so many of the baits I make, that are kind of for the boys, for my friends and for the people who know me. I'll say, hey, why don't you try this one?
Yeah.
And they have a great following, but it may never make it into a catalog. And so I love hearing stories from Marty about how well he's done on that bait, and that it's still out there and getting a lot of fish. I am making them, and it's a lure that has a really nice pop and swim, and it's really forgiving in bumpy water because of that soft rail. It sticks to the water better.
Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, I've heard nothing but good things, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and so, you know, sometimes the subtleties, Chris, it's so hard because I make so many things and they all have a purpose and they all have a little bit of a subtlety to them.
Yeah.
And there's not enough time to fish all these lures.
Yeah.
But when you find something like you said that works, you stick with it. You know, you get bites, you get good hookups, you stick with it.
And
I'm out. I want to make lures to kind of. I want people to be able to find their own magic baits out of the things I make and apply them in their spread.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, people have been doing that with Aloha Lures for a while, so it's it's cool. It's been a really cool thing going through all this. I wonder if there's anything else you want to add or go into. You know, I'm enjoying picking your brain, but is there anything that you want to kind of let people know or explain about your company or anything else?
You know, I think we're headed into a new year and we're going to see some big fish, and I've got a bunch of new things that I'm getting ready to share with everybody. I'm excited about that. Some really small fun stuff that are just all meat, and some really fun big stuff that are hopefully you know, big fish producers. And I think, you know, we're going to see this from so many of the builders out there this year. We're going to see a lot of new products. We're going to see a lot of new things that run differently than we have ever seen before. And I think that's exciting. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. And I'm so grateful through all of this COVID stuff where I haven't, because I take care of give my father a hand and my mom a hand. I haven't been able to go do all the fishing I wanted to do, but I love that I get to fish vicariously through all my friends and through all my friends around the world who choose Aloha to fish with. And so I'm just very grateful and looking forward to a great new year and hopefully some big fish in the teens.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with me about it. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a couple things, and it's cool. I'm looking forward to pulling some of these baits this year and seeing what we can pull up over here. And I appreciate it, Erik. I do. Thank you.
Well, I'll be watching your Instagram posts because I love all the things you do, your camera work, and the way you approach your spread. So we'll definitely be watching on this side, and love to talk some more about this stuff. There's so many aspects to cover, but I think for all the lure makers out there, this is a great way to share what we do and kind of our thoughts behind what we're doing. Yeah,
and I mean that's the thing. It's and maybe some people don't completely understand it, and maybe this will help them see that lure making, it's a craft, it's an art, and that's why there is something really to be said about handmade lures, and that this is something that people put love into. It's an art, and some people may not see that when they see a lure on the shelf and they just think, oh yeah, I'm gonna go buy this lure, and maybe they don't think it and realize that there's a story to every one of these baits, and there's time and love and everything that's gone into this stuff. So I think that's something really cool about marlin fishing with lures and all fishing, not just marlin, but pulling lures in general. I think that the custom handmade lure stuff is just always been an exciting thing that I've always found exciting,
One last thing I'd love to add, I always encourage my friends to try making some lures, because in order sometimes to appreciate what goes into the lures you see in the store is actually making a couple yourself. And there's nothing, there's no greater pleasure than making something with your own hands and then putting it in the water and having a big fish respond to it, and catching even a small fish. It's just there's a thrill to it. But I think, I've always encouraged my friends to pick up the can of resin at the hardware store and go pour some up. And it's just a big part of being more involved in the things we do and putting love into your spread. And it's the same thing we do with our rigging, with our skirting. Every little bit of contact you have with that bait before it goes in the water, I feel like it's part of the energy that you're putting into your spread and creating your own luck.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it, and we'll do this again. I could keep, we keep going, I'm sure, on all kinds.
Right. Well, thank you, Chris. Happy New Year, and go get them.
Thank you.